Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm here to introduce the panel looking at the sustainable tourism. The agenda for the discussion is, first of all, a brief introduction, two short presentations, one from Expo 2020 and the other one from Modal University, and then a panel discussion with a number of experts who will hopefully help me to decipher a lot of the challenges and the thinking and the new developments that are happening in this exciting area. To get us on the same page, let's start with a definition of sustainable tourism. There are many, of course, but a simple one is the concept of visiting somewhere as a tourist and making a positive impact on the environment, society, and the economy. But it's comprised of many, many different parts, of course. As a tourist, you're using transport, you're using accommodation. There's obviously entertainment, recreation in many cases, food, nourishment, and also shopping. And the purpose could be business, it could be leisure, it could be visiting friends and family. And all of these things will impact you as tourists in terms of what you're looking to achieve and how you interact with your new environment. So it sounds straightforward. And I think there's also broad consensus, whoever you talk to, that sustainable tourism makes sense. It's a good idea. And tourism is also popular. I think it's growing year on year. But it's also volatile, and it has its ups and downs, sometimes linked to security or health issues. But how to achieve sustainable tourism, I think, remains the object of much debate. And some of the things we'll talk about today are going to unpick some of the drivers and enablers behind that. How do we enable it? How do we encourage it? How do we measure it? And how do we ensure that it drives conservation at the end of the day? Tourism, to some extent, because it involves travel, involves CO2 emissions. So in a way, it's causing some damage. And historically, we haven't paid much attention to that. So there's an entrenched system and infrastructure in place that encourages more of the same that we need to challenge. And with some of the new developments, some of the new thinking, some of the examples that we have in place around the world, there are great stories that we can tell and great business cases that have been proven that we can now take forward, even if there remain economic, social, and other drivers in place that try and discourage some of that. So the panel today, I have some experts to help me understand what's happening in the world in this space at the moment. Who are the leaders? Where are the good examples? What's the role of government, the private sector, and also the NGOs and other stakeholders? And also, how can advances in technology, construction methods, communications help to drive us in the right direction from a sustainable tourism point of view? What I'd like to do now is invite Dina Mustafa to give a short presentation. Dina is the head of sustainability operations at Expo 2020, Dubai. Dina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, guests. And thank you for having me here. And thank you for allowing me to speak about this very interesting topic. And thank you to my fellow panelists for coming and sharing with me this journey. And hopefully it'll be a good one. Before I start talking about sustainability, sustainable tourism, and about the topic up here, which is driving sustainable tourism through Expo 2020, I want to explain to you a little bit about sustainability and about Expo 2020. So what is a World Expo? A World Expo is a festival for all, where everyone can learn, innovate, create, progress, have fun, share ideas, and come together. It is a truly global event where visitors have the opportunity to experience food, culture, and music. World expositions have a unique role in bringing humanity together. And this is what Expo 2020 is doing. The first World Expo was in 1851 in London, in South Kensington. And many of us know this as the heart of Expo, the start of Expo, I'm sorry. In 1904, the X-ray machine was introduced at the St. Louis Expo. The first picture phone was presented at an expo. The first humanoid was presented at an expo. So let's imagine what's going to come up in the year 2020. Some of the most important architecture, sorry, this thing is not working very well, so bear with me. There's many, many iconic buildings that have come up through an expo. The Eiffel Tower, the Eiffel Tower. Everybody knows the Eiffel Tower. It's it's the icon of Paris, but it was also the entrance to the Expo in 1889. So what is Expo 2020, and why is it important for us to talk about it as a catalyst for driving sustainable change? Expo 2020 has a theme of connecting minds and creating the future, with 3 sub-themes: opportunity, sustainability, and mobility. And as I go through this, I will explain to you that this was not, the themes and the sub-themes were not chosen lightly, but were chosen with a sustainable future in mind. We have over 190 countries, to be precise, 192 countries committed, with 134 publicly announced. Here are some of the architectural designs that have already been announced by Expo 2020. The UK Pavilion, Austria, and many, many more have already announced, and they're available for you to see on our website and also on social media. Our Expo 2020 is expecting 25 million visits, and 70% of those visits are coming from abroad, which is different from other expos that generally focus on the local visitation. The expo site is 438 hectares in size. I'll show you a short video of where we are right now. Oh, and the video is not working. Typical technology. Sorry about that. The expo opens its doors on the 10th of October 2020 and closes its doors on the 10th of April 2021. Sorry, 20th of October 2020. Although mentioned, the total site is 4.3 square kilometers or 438 hectares. Our goal for the expo is to focus on the legacy of the expo versus only the 6 months of the expo. It is very important for us to work towards legacy. We're looking at the physical legacy, the economic legacy, the social legacy, and the reputational legacy to integrate into our site. We are working towards a very immersive and very engaging visitor experience, which includes sustainability at its core. So the DNA of the expo is a sustainable expo. These are just pictures of some of our pavilions. This is the UAE pavilion, and it is at the heart of the expo. Al Wasl Plaza, which is designed by Adrian Smith and Gordon Gill, is an immersive experience, a 360-degree screen that shows both on the outside, on the inside, the content. And now I come to my favorite topic, sustainability. So why do we do all of this? We have set out to deliver one of the most sustainable expos in history. Why? because we believe that there is a growing sense of urgency among tourists to see things while they still last. The Arabian leopard, the green turtle, the sand dune cats, the hammerhead sharks, the corals that are being bleached, they're all there, but they're going away. And this doesn't have to be the case, and we can work together to change that. We want to use the Expo platform to create a global movement towards change. This is why it is an integral part of our infrastructure, content, messaging, operation, and hopefully innovation and motivation. So what does the Expo objective of having one of the most sustainable expos in history mean? It means that we will set a legacy of sustainable infrastructure, we will catalyze sustainability efforts in Dubai and the UAE, we will increase public awareness, and we will develop sustainable solutions that are scalable and innovative and will last a lifetime. We ensured our sustainability drivers are extrapolated from the SDGs, global commitments. We integrated the Dubai Vision 2021 and the Dubai Plan 2021, and we took on a strategy that has over 40 KPIs that we are driving and managing on a daily basis. I don't want to bore you with all of the KPIs, but I'll just give you a highlight. So we've set a target of 85% diversion from landfill, and we are monitoring that and achieving that every single day. We have set a target for 40% for our water conservation below the DEWA baseline, and we are monitoring that and achieving that on every single day. We have over 100 LEED Gold buildings with 2 LEED Platinum buildings also on site. This integrates sustainability into the site, but that's not enough. We are looking beyond the infrastructure. We are looking beyond building a sustainable site. We're looking at the content. We have integrated sustainability into our DNA, as I mentioned before. We have identified 8 main focus areas to create meaningful content, underpinned by education and empowerment that captures and resonates to the young and the old. We believe that this content will not only drive future visitation to Expo, but also the UAE, and sets it apart as a destination that is committed to a sustainable future and an environmentally friendly culture and existence. Now I'd like to talk a little bit more about how sustainability drives change. We've been working very closely with our analytics team. We've been gathering data, and these are some of our findings that I think that would be very, very interesting to a lot of you. In the academic discipline of sustainability, the focus is not only on the environment and social impact of sustainability. The economic impact is very, very vital to a strengthening, sustainable future. We have been doing a lot of research, and here are some of our findings. Sustainable and eco experiences are in demand by tourists. According to the global consumer surveys, the likelihood of booking a sustainably focused trip is 37%. That's over 1/3 of the respondents to our global survey. The top country respondents are coming from China, Turkey, and Malaysia. Characteristics of these respondents are actually quite high. They're the high income bracket, and they're young, and they're looking to create change. Expo 2020's International Visitor Experience Survey results are 3 in 10 international visits to the UAE, visitors to the UAE are looking for a destination with an environmentally friendly image. Results are largely consistent across different nationalities. However, only 1.6% of international visitors believe that the UAE's most important factor is sustainability. There's a gap there, and we see it. But we believe that Expo and our stakeholders, such as Dubai Tourism, such as Abu Dhabi Tourism, and all of the other tourism agencies can help us drive that forward. And the reason we see that this is a driver, because Dubai and the UAE are doing a lot when it comes to sustainability. Our goal is to capture it and make it stand out. Locally, our survey shows that the UAE residents see themselves as involved in supporting the environment. 63% state that they consciously do things to support the environment. That is over half of the residents of the UAE believe that they support the environment, which is a big number. And we aim to capture and inspire them to do more. In conclusion, Expo 2020 presents an opportunity to attract the sustainable, eco-minded tourist. Global research supports the idea of sustainable tourism as a growing trend. The trend is validated by Expo 2020 research. A sustainable Expo will be aligned with the majority of the UAE residents and their values, as well as the tourists visiting the UAE. A sustainable Expo will also showcase the UAE's drive towards sustainability and an environmentally friendly future. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to answering questions.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you for introducing what Expo is looking to do. Thank you for setting the bar so high as an example for everybody else here. Sharing some of your stories. My personal experience is the best way to bring about change is to share stories of what has worked where. And we all look forward to seeing how this moves forward before, during, of course, but most importantly, afterwards. I'd now like to invite my next panelist up on stage, Yasmina Locke. She's the Program and Research Director, Development Director at Modal University.
Thank you very much, Gus. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's a great pleasure, a great honor for me, as someone very passionate about the topic of sustainable tourism and responsible traveler, to actually have opportunity to talk to the private sector, public sector, and everybody else present here, some of my students, in fact, about the topic that is so close to my heart. Can I just... sorry. Which one is it? Which one is it? Big one. Yep. Okay. Sorry about that. This is a new pointer for me. May I ask you, do you recognize the place that we have on the slide? Has anyone been there? It's called Maya Bay, correct. I'm sure lots of you have either been there or are planning to visit Thailand. Well, this is actually one of the most beautiful natural spots in Thailand. Unfortunately, it doesn't look that pretty. I think you're going to agree with me. This looks nothing like it looks in the brochures. It's one of the places that has been heavily overcrowded. And to be honest, when I was there last year with my family, we couldn't find a single spot on that beach to take a photo without having at least 10 speedboats and 20 tourists in the photo. A lot of selfie sticks. Now, unfortunately, this is what happens when we don't take sustainability in tourism very seriously. What we get overcrowded attractions. We have incredible stress on infrastructure used by tourists and infrastructure used by the people living in the area. We do get a lot of stress on natural resources. So especially in arid areas, this is an incredibly large problem where in tourist season, there's no water or they lack even electricity. At the same time, we see commoditization of tourism product. We get something that is very staged, not authentic at all, and that essentially drives our margins down. We become destination where only very low budget travelers actually visit. Now, fortunately, not so long ago, the government of Thailand decided to do something about it, and they actually completely closed the beach. Now, is this something sustainable? Well, we can argue about that, but this spot needs to recover. And a lot of other spots around the world also do need to recover. One more thing that tourism causes when it's not controlled and not planned well is actually through overcrowding, we get a lot of irritation of local residents. And I'm sure you will agree that we have some of that happening all around the world. And you've been probably in destinations such as Venice, where in every other building you can see a graffiti stating tourists go home. So this is something that we absolutely don't want to happen, and this is why sustainable tourism is there for us and for the governments, for the private sector, and for the tourists to take it very seriously. And when I say sustainable tourism, I hear very often a misconception about sustainable tourism, that we're only talking about environment, but that's absolutely not the case. And I'm sure everybody maybe in this room knows, but a lot of people don't, that we're looking at 3 pillars of sustainability. We're looking at triple bottom line, so we need to, without actually connecting these 3 and paying attention to all 3, so looking at social, economic, and environmental impacts, we can't actually expect prosperity or tourism destinations that won't stagnate and eventually decline. So essentially, even if you're very economically feasibility oriented, you have to understand that you have to protect the very attraction you're promoting to the world before that is damaged, and then you can't profit on it at all. So it's as simple as that. Social aspect we always highlight because it's so important that community is involved in what is happening in tourism and that community actually benefits from it. So once you involve the community, even here in the UAE, what would we see? We would see a lot more authentic products that we can, or experiences that we can promote to the world. Now, what is really important is that this is not something we can do alone. This is not something government will plan, private sector will respect, but we actually need tourists. We need those tourists who understand the actual essence of sustainable tourism, that care about it. And these are our responsible tourists. This is the responsible tourist market. Now, recently, through trying to encourage different research, working on with my students on their thesis and going to conferences, we came across, when we talk about responsible tourist market, we came across a few questions which I actually want to share with you today and probably argue against. There's a lot of skepticism when it comes to sustainability and when it comes to responsible traveler or sustainable traveler. In fact, terminology when it comes to sustainable traveler, that's very new. It's more common in the US. In European sources, you more find responsible tourist, eco-tourist, and so on. But they're all very aware of environmental impact, of social impact of their own activities. So it's very interesting to see that a lot of people actually asked us, well, why would we attract this type of tourists to the UAE? Would that be profitable? Maybe they don't consider us as a sustainable destination, but I'm saying no. We actually need to see who these people are and how we can benefit from them. And I'm telling you, we can benefit a lot. So what I'm going to try to answer today are 3 questions. Should we attract the responsible tourist as one? Do tourists make decisions based on sustainable practices? Are they ready to pay more if we say we are sustainable, we source locally, and so on? And finally, can we build a business case for sustainable tourism? And I think all 3 will be answered positively. So let's see. First, I would like to point out that we have done a lot of research about this market segment. And in fact, it's not a market segment. Every market segment has those people who are responsible tourists. So this is not just demographic, this is something broader than that. So we're looking for those ones that are aware of sustainability initiatives, that are environmentally conscious and aware, and so on. So first of all, we asked, well, what do they need? What are they after? No longer people are satisfied just to have a clean room, just to have basic amenities and crowded beach. They actually want something more. So these tourists that, let's say, decided in the survey whether they consider themselves sustainable tourists, they said they're after connecting with nature. They're really after connecting with people. They're saying that their lives are very busy. They are very much immersed in their careers in digitalized world, that they actually wanted to reconnect with nature and communities. Finally, they said they wanted to experience something authentic. They said they wanted to experience something unique. They said they wanted to do something, and during their trip, to do something good for the residents and good for the environment. And finally, I will just add one little point there. In fact, we're seeing huge growth of volunteerism tourism, and people are going for those kind of trips more and more, and especially as middle class is growing, and especially because income, disposable income is growing. So people do, especially families, are keen to go on these trips. Finally, we asked the questions, well, do these people really care about sustainability, or are they just saying it? Do they care about sustainability, or are they actually ready to pay a little bit more in order to go for sustainable trips, to purchase their holidays from tour operators, accommodation providers, and everybody else who is ready to invest in sustainable initiatives? And the answer was yes, they were actually ready. Different surveys show different data, but they were ready to pay from anywhere from 5 to 50% more for their trips if they knew that part of that is contributing to the community, part of that is contributing to nature conservation, and part of that is obviously contributing to the provider of the tourism. So every second traveler in the survey actually declared themselves as a sustainable traveler. And what did they mean by that? Well, they meant that they are the ones that really care about minimizing environmental impact. So that's actually quite a lot of people. And if we look at some figures, a lot of them said they prefer green stay. Overall, 2 out of 3 people said they prefer green stay. They prefer to stay in environmentally friendly accommodation and environmentally friendly trip. What really surprised us is that 9 out of 10 Chinese tourists, and this is one question I really like answering when I'm asked, do Chinese tourists really care about environment? Well, yes, they actually do. It depends what segment of their market you attract. So high expenditure, higher disposable income, more educated, they actually do care. 4 out of 5 Brazilians and Spaniards also said they prefer green stay. 2 out of 3 would accept higher cost of locally produced food, so they're aware of that as well. They were ready to accept, majority was ready to accept recycled toilet paper. Majority said they would accept showers and less flow. Then they wanted to engage in activities that would actually contribute to the local community. Interesting part was when it came to hospitality and hotel establishments. In fact, tourists are very keen on what type of accommodation they're staying in and whether they are sustainable initiatives and sustainable practices in place in those hotels. So they primarily wanted to know, and the top of the list were solar panels and use of solar energy. Second one was sustainable water system, and third one was low flow showers and toilets in hotels. Responsible tourists really wanted to buy more and significantly more from those tour operators and other providers of tourism product and destinations that appeared more sustainable. So they were ready to pay more for authentic experiences, they were ready to pay more to buy local, and they were ready to pay to those that actually educated customers. So a lot of tours where some education was provided to customers were very interesting for them, even if they would need to pay more. Their expenditure was consistently higher. This particular one came from the US study, and spend per trip was consistently significantly higher in sustainable traveler in comparison to other leisure travelers. So they consistently spent more. They were high net worth individuals or higher disposable income individuals. And both baby boomers and millennials consistently wanted something that is more authentic and more experience rather than anything else. Overall figure was 51% higher for sustainable tourists than for all other leisure tourists, which was very important to see because it actually supports our argument that we should attract this type of tourist. And we actually have a lot to give in this destination. One more point, our sustainable tourists or travelers or responsible tourists are actually well-traveled people. They travel a lot, they've seen a lot, and they're not only focusing on sun and sands and the beach, they're focused on experiences. They travel more personally, but they considerably they travel considerably more internationally than all other leisure tourists. They also travel more for business. Finally, they stay significantly longer at accommodation where they are, and they go on probably 7+ days during their stays, rather than only 3 to 4 nights overnight stay. Even 58% of Condé Nast Traveler readers said that they would choose hotel based on whether the hotel gives back to local people and the planet. So that's actually a large figure for something like that is actually questioned, do people really care? Well, they do care. In fact, 50% of guests in hotels are inquiring about carbon offsetting, and they really do care about what hotels are doing in that case. I wanted to highlight one more thing just quickly. Hotels are actually being very good and are taking this feedback on board. They have implemented a lot of practices based on the feedback from customers because they do want to satisfy their customer. They're very quick to do that, but unfortunately, less than 50% put these initiatives on their website. So they're not actually promoting what they're doing good. And I believe this is something similar to what is happening here. I think UAE, Dubai, and especially with upcoming Expo, is the destination that has so many sustainability initiatives to offer and to portray to the world. Just one more quick thing. Our responsible traveler actually travels with more companions. They're more likely to travel with friends than other leisure travelers, and they travel in bigger groups. Millennials are the fastest growing segment in tourism in general, but also they drive sustainable tourism market. They are the ones who are interested in contributing to communities. They're interested in minimizing their environmental impact. So they are a really good group to study and to welcome now to our destinations. 41% said they're interested in booking ecotourism holiday, which is even further than what we were talking about. Finally, do these sustainable practices make destinations more competitive? Well, I have to say quickly, yes. One of the best destinations to have as example is Costa Rica. If you look at their statistics, in fact, their number of overnight stays in the last 10 years since they changed their strategy considerably changed. So it went from 6 overnight stays for air travelers all the way to 12 overnight stays for overnight travelers. And that is because it basically doubled because they made sure that their strategies fully focused on sustainability in every aspect. And I wouldn't like someone to think, well, Costa Rica is a very different destination to the UAE. I did some research on Costa Rica, spoke to their experts, and they said they actually have seasons, such as wet season, such as very humid season, and it's not very easy to run tourism all year round, even in that climate, which is considerably different, obviously, than the climate we have here, but they have their challenges as well. Irrespective, they managed to overcome them. My last point will be about Chinese tourists. Well, Chinese tourists travel more and more. They are one of the largest growing markets when it comes to outbound tourism markets. And we're expecting in GCC area nearly 3 million Chinese tourists by 2022. They have different, of course, segments of that market. And finally, high-end travel products can be offered to them as well. But the question is always, is environmental sustainability a concern to Chinese travelers? And I hear a lot of people being negative about it and saying, no, they don't really, and their environment is disaster, so this is something that, sorry, I'll wrap it up. So their environment is disaster, therefore they don't know much about environmentalism. Well, in fact, that's not the case. China's environment is disaster at the moment, but since 2013, they had massive ecological disasters that have considerably raised awareness of their approach and understanding environmentalism and what environment means to us. So finally, it actually caught a lot of attention from their government, and they have a lot of programs in terms of education, awareness, but as well as on-ground planting trees by their army just recently, and so on. And you'll be surprised how aware they are. But of course, especially those ones that are in a higher end market segment, they're the ones that care the most. UAE as destination has absolute advantage to attract responsible tourists. We have high-end tourists, we have well-educated tourists, we have availability of financial resources within the country to implement these practices. We have a lot of modern technology. We're far ahead of many other destinations around the world, and we're open to innovation. And I firmly believe that Expo 2020 is actually an excellent opportunity to attract such people. They're very important for us because as much as we're trying as industry in the country and public sector to be sustainable, unless we attract people that understand that and that support it, we're not going to get very far. Final word is that we have a couple of problems that we're constantly facing. One is skepticism, and it comes both from the industry and destinations, and on the other hand, from tourists. Your responsible tourist is actually very aware of all green practices, so they're skeptics. You really need to convince them that you're doing the right thing. On the other hand, you have a lot of skepticism on whether there's a business case for sustainability, and in fact there is. There's also short-termism. We're all looking at ROI in the very next quarter, and should we invest now, and how much is that going to bring us in the next quarter? Well, sustainability will not bring you anything in the next quarter. It's a long-term investment, but it's the only way we can proceed with tourism. We need to focus on yield per tourist rather than increasing purely numbers. So that is very important, that we increase overnight stays and their expenditure at destination. So finally, should you attract them? The tourists make decisions based on sustainable practices. And can we build business case for sustainable tourism? I say yes, and I hope you're a little bit more convinced than before the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yasmina, for bringing in the global insight. There's a lot happening, as you can see, around the world. Thank you also for highlighting some of the key questions that we should be asking, giving us some more facts about the tourists themselves. Who is the market? Who are we trying to attract? What do they want? And providing such a strong support for the business case, which I think there is as well. I'd now like to bring up the rest of the panel so that we can have a broader discussion, starting with Yusuf Luta, please. He's the Executive Director, Tourism Development and Investments here in Dubai at DTCM. Also, Shannon Scott, he's the Senior Manager for Environmental Affairs at Emirates Airlines. And Alma Al-Yong, who's the Corporate Director, Strategic Projects and Partnerships at Imar, another important player. Great, thank you all for joining me on stage. We've had a very good sort of intro covering a number of things. What I'd like to focus on first is a little bit more detail of what's happening in the UAE. And perhaps the best person to start with on this is yourself, Yusuf, in terms of what's happening in Dubai around sustainable tourism, and what are some of the initiatives that you're looking to promote at the moment?
We ventured in Dubai tourism a few years back on looking at the growth of Dubai as a destination to become a global tourism destination. And with that comes the pressure on the tourism sector from a sustainability perspective. So how can we answer that big question? And with the vision of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Prime Minister of the UAE, ruler of Dubai, we've worked out a plan to make Dubai a sustainable destination. And it starts with managing carbon. And that goes in line with the COPA agreement. And Dubai has been and will continue to be a role model of sustainable practices. And to that extent, we have implemented numerous innovative solutions to help the hospitality industry to become a sustainable one. A few years back, we started rolling out our plan, and the framework on it revolves around awards, around celebrating results, around monitoring performance, around education, and help spread the word out, and around standards. So just recently we've announced new hotel classification standards, which in themselves, there are about 19 criteria in them that covers all aspects of the hotel cycle, which hopefully is going to reinforce the reduction of carbon emissions from the hotel sector. We've implemented a carbon calculator which monitors emissions from the hotels. The data collected in that is so insightful for the hotels. Just like a financial statement, it helps them see their carbon emissions. We've implemented an online educational programs. So we have with Dubai College of Tourism, we've implemented a sustainability curriculum that basically helps people learn, and we've mandated it into the hospitality standards that a minimum number of staff have to be sustainability certified. We've looked at numerous things. I mean, one of them is the easy guide for the smaller hotels to implement simple initiatives to reduce their carbon emissions. And it has one of the highest download numbers that we've seen in Dubai tourism. I mean, I can keep going. But having said that, one of the key things is the sector is well aware of the value of trying to reduce the carbon emissions from an environmental perspective. They see the value of the sustainable tourist. And it's improving dramatically. Recently, one of the results that we've seen in terms of just managing water and energy was equal to taking off 80,000 cars off the road, just by the savings over the last. So it's quite, we do see the results, and we monitor them. And the next phase of us pushing forward with the industry is to see the implementation of the standards. Yeah. The value of it is going to be dramatic, especially with the retrofitting scheme that we've developed with the energy sector, where they provide their project financing. So there is no reason for a hotel to not consider a retrofitting program which can drop between 30 to 40% of their current emissions. So there is plenty to be done. We've just introduced also a new destination attraction here in Dubai called Al Marmoon Bedouin Camp, which is a totally Bedouin accurate experience in all the details in it, very sustainable. The old people of Dubai were very sustainable. So we reimagined it in a story, in an immersive experience where you can go to Al Marmoon and have that experience, and it's currently available for visitation. Yeah.
That's great, thank you, Youssef. I mean, first of all, that people see value in this. I think the introduction of standards is very important to regularize it and make it part of business as usual. I think the other thing I like is the all-inclusive approach. There is no escape for people to try and find a way to do things differently going forward, which is also very important. I'd like to turn to you, Alma. As Imar, of course, you're responsible for a lot of the infrastructure here in Dubai around hotels, shopping malls, etc. What are some of the initiatives that Imar is doing to also drive this message forward and be a good showcase, a good example?
Absolutely. Distinguished panel, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to represent Imar at this prestige forum. As the official hotel and hospitality partner of Expo 2020 Dubai, Imar Hospitality Group is committed to upholding the key pillars of the world-class event: sustainability, mobility, and opportunity. Now, to address your questions, on the sustainable development initiative of Imar. As the pioneer of the integrated master planned communities, from the design phase, our development approach has been underpinned by these three core pillars, where we create modern, livable space with all the lifestyle amenities in a close proximity to reduce carbon footprint. As an example of practical application, environmental sustainability is Burj Khalifa. Let me explain to you this. Dubai is hot, it's humid climate. Combining the building's cooling requirement creates a significant amount of condensation. So this water is collected and drained in a separate piping system in a holding tank in the basement car park. So the condensate system providing about like 15 million gallons of supplement water per year, which equivalent to about 20 Olympic swimming pools. So you can fully utilizing this water for some other purposes. And for the hospitality sectors, and we are very proud to be the first hospitality company in UAE, utilizing the artificial intelligence by partnering with to cut the food waste. Just a very encouraging result I would like to share with you. In the first year of implementation, we have a saving 72% of food waste, which is equivalent to 250,000 meals saved, and a 1.3 million cost saving across 12 properties. Also a carbon footprint reductions of 435,000 tons.
It's very impressive. I mean, I like the focus on resources. I mean, often there's a wastefulness around a lot of the resources that are imported. And I think what's also interesting is applications of technology and AI and things like that, which can provide some immediate and big savings as well. Shannon, if we can turn to you, I mean, Emirates is usually the first thing people see when they're coming to the region, and you're responsible for bringing a lot of the tourists to the region. What are you doing as an airline to promote sustainable tourism, and what do you see yourself doing going forward?
Well, I'd like to start from the point that flying really still is the best way for traveling long distances around the world. And we're still dependent on jet fuel and on turbine engines as the most energy efficient means of moving us around the world at decent speed. So our first priority is minimizing our fuel consumption and therefore the emissions. And we take a multi-pronged effort to achieving that. We start by investing in a young, fuel-efficient and technologically advanced fleet. So the average age of our aircraft is usually around or under 6 years. Then our flight operations specialists work effortlessly, in great detail to operate the aircraft, fly more efficiently. Whether it's making use of the winds, planning flights to take best advantage of the winds, to fly shorter routes where possible, and pilots also use techniques such as using idle reverse thrust on landing instead of full reverse thrust, and switching one engine off while they're taxiing in, where it's safe and reasonable to do so. But our flight ops specialists also work on supporting infrastructure and improvements around the world. For example, working with airports and with air traffic management providers and authorities around the world to implement more efficient fuel-saving procedures. On the ground, again, saving fuel, for example, by using ground power instead of running the aircraft auxiliary power unit where possible. And we're saving weight wherever possible on the aircraft, which again saves fuel. Associated with that, we're acutely aware of the problem around plastic waste pollution. So we're working very hard again on identifying opportunities to remove unnecessary plastic and to minimize waste across the business. We're procuring more sustainable items, and we have our eco-thread sustainable blankets in economy class on the flights, which each blanket's made from 28 recycled plastic bottles. But wildlife and conservation are also very close to the heart of the Emirates Group. And we've been supporting action against the illegal wildlife trade, wildlife trafficking, in particular through the organisation United for Wildlife. And for this, we decorated 4 of our A380s with enormous decals, decorations, to bring that message around the world and raise awareness of the problem. And we've also invested heavily in the development and protection of 2 nature-based sites. The Dubai Desert Conservation Reserve, here in Dubai, out in the desert, and Emirates' one and only Wolgan Valley in Australia. And both of these protect unique flora and fauna, while at the same time providing a really special opportunity for visitors to experience those locations.
That's great. No, I mean, it's very powerful communication. Of course, you're dealing with millions and millions of people every year, so there's a huge potential impact that you can have on those individuals. Yasmina, I'd like to come back to you and ask you what role academia can really play in all of this. I mean, we know about research and publishing reports and collecting statistics and things like that, but what are some of the more proactive ways in which the academic world can contribute to this whole agenda?
Right. Well, thank you. That's an interesting question always for us. And well, I work at a university that is focused on tourism, hospitality, and sustainability. So it makes a lot of sense that we're actually, and I think our primary role is to educate new generation of people who are going to be in the industry. So they will be the main drivers of sustainable tourism, or at least I hope so. Some of them are in the audience. I'd like to say hello. They are very focused on doing independent research and research with us from the academia that is focused on sustainable tourism, on conscious consumer, and so on and so forth. But what I would like to highlight is something that actually is even more maybe interesting and is not so standard, is that UNWTO United Nations World Tourism Organization, has started cooperating with a lot of universities and governments around the world. So first of all, we provide also courses in cooperation with UNWTO experts. In fact, the last one was on sustainable tourism destinations. And something I find really interesting is that since 2004, UNWTO also organized a network of, it's called INSTO, so it's basically International Network of Sustainable Tourism Observatories. Now, these are very important and spread all around the world, and they are generally done in cooperation between university, the government of the country or the destination, and then from the pool of sustainable tourism indicators that UNWTO suggests, we are basically tasked to select the indicators that are most relevant for the region where we're going to observe them. Once that is done, observatory actually becomes live and starts monitoring those indicators. I think that it's really important that academia has actually the manpower and students that are interested in researching such topic, because these indicators show us very quickly if anything is going wrong or in the wrong direction, and we might be experiencing some negative impact. So I think academia working with UNWTO, the government and the industry, and analyzing those potential issues is extremely important. And then by involving students in all these projects and initiatives is even more important, because, as I said right at the beginning, they're the ones that are going to take over the industry, destinations, and start working in it with a lot more awareness than what people that started 20 years ago and 10 years ago had. So I'm hoping for something very positive that comes from universities and also from vocational schools. Why not?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, there is also a need for a knowledge repository that allows these lessons to be captured and then built upon going forward, and a great way for engaging, the next generations. Dina, Expo, of course, is also a huge platform to educate, to inform, not only what's happening at the moment in the UAE, but also what might be possible in future. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think Expo is a catalyst. I mentioned it during my presentation. I think our role is to bring that sustainable tourists, but also other people who are, as you talked about, skeptical, and show them what Dubai, what the UAE is all about, and show them that there is a future that is actually focusing on sustainability. The UAE is a signatory of the Paris Climate Agreement. The UAE has made many, many commitments, and they're standing by their commitments. And we see this as an opportunity to bring people together, to showcase the best of what the UAE has to offer. But I always say we can't do this alone. We do this with our partners, we do this with other government entities, and we have been working closely to make sure that we get projects off the ground, and also to showcase not just what Expo does, but what the UAE does in general, for now and in the future. I mean, our legacy is just as important as what happens during those 6 months.
No, great. Youssef, coming back to you, I'd like to explore a theme of why it's important to develop Dubai as a sustainable destination. Can you tell us a little bit about the importance of the economic impact for Dubai of going down this road?
I think the economic impact of going green has shifted. The mindset has shifted. More and more we see that the threshold between an expensive inconvenience and quite a profitable proposition is getting blurry, and in some cases it's actually more cost effective to go green. And at the same time, it offers a feel-good factor, whether it's for the hotel or for the guest. Each each room, for example, can, from a retrofitting exercise, can save up to 28 to 30,000 annually if they decide to go green. And it's a big impact when you are running a sizable number of rooms.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it also has an effect in terms of releasing capacity from the grid, or reducing landfills, or reducing basically extra unnecessary stress on the environment. And we've experimented right now with, in Al Marmoon, for example, with the social side, where Emirati Bedouins end up being part of the system. Through the Dubai College of Tourism, we've worked very hard on the Midiyaf program to basically train and develop Emiratis in the field, and we have a partnership with the Expo on that one. So the effect is quite massive and wide, and we hope that it will continue with the hospitality sector and the tourism sector as well, the wider sector. Oops. To get the wider sector in with the program.
Okay, great. We're being waved at that our
Yeah.
time is coming to an end. So just very quickly, Yasmina, any case studies that really provide a very strong business case for going down the sustainable tourism route? One or two examples?
I would say again, Costa Rica.
Yep.
I think brilliant example.
Great.
Increased overnight stays, better quality, high-end visitors, authentic experiences, finally very profitable.
Great.
And the other one, Monaco.
Okay.
Destination far more similar to Dubai. Urban destination, luxury destination, and their most recent campaign is Green is the New Glam. So strong interest in obviously green practices, and I had opportunity to go there maybe a month ago, and things are actually in place. So it's happening, and it's proving to be profitable for them, and it looks very sustainable. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Alma, just a quick question for you. I mean, obviously you don't do everything by yourself. There's lots of partnerships and other organizations you need to work with. Are there two that you'd pick out specifically that you see as offering great potential to allow you to move forward with this agenda?
I think, with the earlier presentation by Dina and also Yasmina, I pick up a few things that, first, Chinese are very much focusing on, sustainability. And we, in fact, already actually follow the 12-step eco guide by Dubai Tourism. We're working on this, continually. But how do we actually, as a destination and also hotel hospitality partners, to create more awareness, to showcasing to the world, to shout out loud that, to increase this 1.6%, people looking at the choosing destination and considering UAE, Dubai as the sustainable city.
Great. Shannon, final word? Anything that you see Emirates sort of being able to support going forward in the wider Dubai sort of ecosystem?
Well, we'll certainly be building on our existing experience and expertise. Every year, for example, our team at the Dubai Desert Conservation Reserve, which is part of the Emirates Group, host a group from a company called Biosphere Expeditions, which is a citizen science group program looking into actually helping out with research in the reserve. So that's a great sort of nucleus to build on. And then I think there are many opportunities, as you've just mentioned, that we can all communicate better the stories around what's happening and the opportunities for the future. But I'd just like to finish up on one quick quote from Sir David Attenborough, which I think is a brilliant one for summarising the opportunity and perhaps the peril for tourism. He said, people will only protect what they care about, and they will only care about what they have experienced. Thanks very much.
No, very profound. Dina, last word from Expo?
I can't top Sir David
You can't top
Attenborough.
that. Okay, with that, Dina, and our panelists, thank you all very much. Please join me in thanking them for their contributions.